Good morning, I'm Robert Auckman, and welcome to the January Wednesday morning roundtable program. Thanks to our membership, we so appreciate your support. Although content is free and accessible to the public, if you haven't joined yet, please do so. Visit auburndowntown.org and click on the roundtable tab. Today's topic is CEDA and AIDA's new place branding initiative to aid in business and talent attraction development. This program features guests Tracy Verrier, Executive Director of Cayuga Economic Development Agency, Gwen Webber-McLeod, President and CEO of Gwen Inc., and Auburn Industrial Development Authority Board Member, and Gavin Thomas, founding partner of TGW Studio in Rochester. The program moderator is Stephanie DeVito, Executive Director of the Downtown Auburn BID. This BID program is brought to you by Tompkins Trust Company. Thank you everyone for joining us. And Stephanie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you to everyone and welcome again. We are thrilled to have you as panelists to kind of enlighten our community on our upcoming project that we've all been working on, and that CEDA and AIDA have initiative. So let's start with Tracy. And the first question I have for you is, can you share just kind of the backstory about this initiative and how it came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having us today and letting us talk about this initiative. It really kind of came to being over the past year. So in this year, when everything was crazy, this whole plan really came to a head. So it is something that we've been noticing. The idea of place branding is something that we've been noticing in economic development for a while now. We've been seeing this trend emerging. And then back in February, I went to a conference because that's something we used to do. And at this conference, there was a session about branding and marketing and economic development and the emerging trends. And it was very focused on this place branding concept. And they provided a lot of examples of other communities that are doing this and how it's working out for them. So I came home from the conference and was chatting with Devin about this. And we kind of said, this would be great if we had, the resources to do it. Shortly thereafter, I think it must have been maybe even in March, at an AIDA meeting, that this came up. The idea of, AIDA would like to invest in marketing our community and marketing for business attraction. So immediately, Devin and I said, oh, good, we have an idea. And that's where we started to talk about using this place-based branding model and concept for the city of Auburn and AIDA.
Great, thank you. So for folks who may be wondering, what exactly is a place brand? Can you describe to us, please, what that might be and how that looks?
Sure. So really, the idea of a place brand is exactly what it sounds like. It is the idea of branding a community, as opposed to branding the various organizations and municipalities and players within the community. So if you think about, if you are looking to move to a new location, you're not looking for the economic development agency. You're not looking for that city. You don't really necessarily want to look at that city's website. What we're trying to do is provide information and an experience focused on Auburn as a place. So we are looking to provide a narrative and to provide information that is focused on the city and rooted in the city, as opposed to any individual organization within the city. We want to tell a whole comprehensive story about living, working, and doing business in the city of Auburn. And to a certain extent, that does leverage the assets that the entire county brings to the table. So this does leak out a little bit into the county as well, but with it being an AIDA initiative, we are focused on the city at this point.
Okay. And given that said, with the whole comprehensive plan that you just mentioned, So is there a specific message, or what is your messaging that you're trying to convey? And then the second part of that question is, who is your audience, and who are you trying to reach?
So this initiative in particular is focused on reaching two primary target audiences. One is businesses that might want to do business in the city of Auburn, that might be looking for an additional location or to change up their location. We're going to use this brand as a way to message for our business attraction strategy. So that's one audience. And then the other is talent attraction. So we want people who are curious about living in the city of Auburn to have a place to go to find the information they need about what it's like to be here. This brand is really intended to have a very genuine voice of the city of Auburn. And that is very much based in some extensive research that was done over the last few months. So TGW, who you will hear from later, did a pretty extensive research project where they spoke one-on-one and in focus groups to local business owners, residents, community leaders, and they took all of that information to create a voice and a narrative that will hopefully reflect the city's personality and character. And that will help businesses and talent individuals who are looking to perhaps engage with or move to the city of Auburn better understand what it's like to be here and how they might fit into this community.
Right. So how will this initiative be implemented?
Oh, we are way down the road now. So we did an RFP process to hire a consulting firm, a marketing firm, to help us with this process. That is Gavin and Lisa at TGW and their team have been working with us for a number of months now on this. So as I mentioned, it started with a research phase. There was a lot of discussion around the research and developing this voice, this genuine voice. Now we're into kind of a marketing plan. We've developed a marketing plan and a marketing strategy. We're developing the actual marketing collateral, the logo, the website, those types of things with TGW. And then we're going to get into a phase of launching it. We're going to launch the brand, start to promote it. Gavin's got the whole plan, but we're looking at things that we're going to have a website. We're looking at maybe things like podcasting, a PR strategy. How do we reach CEOs and site selectors? So having strategies for each of our audiences to launch this brand and reach out to the community using email marketing, social media, digital marketing, all the different tools that are available to us. So we're kind of in that phase now where we're developing those tools. And then within the next couple of months here, we'll start to get into a launch.
So how will the place branding that you're working on now, how is it going to complement the messaging that already exists?
Yeah, so some folks might be familiar with Gavin and Lisa already because they're working with the Eco Rights Heritage Center in the city on that marketing and branding for the new visitor center. But we're also working closely with the tourism office, and we want to incorporate some of the messaging around the History's Hometown theme. So really we're working with partners like BID Tourism, City of Auburn to try to be as comprehensive as possible and involve them in the process. We're also, this brand will be available to them, and, as appropriate, our partners can work with us to use this brand to have a constant message across the board. So it's about collaboration and working with those partners to make sure that we have a consistent message that is appropriate for our audience. But of course, all of these organizations also have their own audiences. So it's not a matter of us trying to have one brand for everybody, because that's a no-win scenario. But we do want to make sure that when we are looking out to audiences like potential residents and potential businesses, that we do have a consistent message. So it's about collaboration and sharing and making sure that we're staying in touch with each other.
So you touched upon this a little bit in regards to, what your vision and goals are, but can you kind of expand a little bit, how you see the vision and goals for this campaign?
Yeah, so this is very exciting. This is something that it's just very different from anything that we've tried to do before from an attraction standpoint. And ideally, what we want to come from this is there being, having the city of Auburn be a more recognizable name in the outside world. But then ultimately, the ultimate goal is to have people moving to the area and having businesses move to the area. That is the goal here. We want to see, I'll call them mission aligned businesses. We want businesses that will fit into our community, that will fit into the supply chain, that have the resources they need here. We want to make sure that the businesses we're bringing are a good fit for our community. But also, the same thing for residents. Who are the folks that want to live among the assets that we have? And that's really what I want to see. I want to see people and businesses that feel like they belong in our community and are a good fit in our community to be moving to the area and see the expansion of the tax base as a result.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely agree with what you just said, especially because, we see a lot of youth that either they were born and raised here and they want to stay here, or we have a lot of youth that is also looking to come into our city that realize what we have as far as to offer, in the city and the county as well. So I think it's really great that you're kind of looking at, all the audiences, but certainly attracting that youth to live, work, play here to kind of bring up the next boom into, our community. So that's great. It's good to hear. So now I'm going to transfer over to Gwen Webber-McLeod, who is probably a sidekick with Tracy, who is on the AIDA board. So they kind of work hand in hand together. So Gwen, I'm going to start with you as an AIDA board member, can you just please share with us, what does AIDA do? How does AIDA function?
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. And I'm very honored. Just want to let the community know to have the opportunity to sit on this very important community board. And especially as the president and CEO of a private sector business, I certainly recognize the importance of having an entity like AIDA in the community. So as I reflected on it and kind of asked Tracy to school me a little bit before today, when I think we can synthesize the work of AIDA into a couple of nuggets that'll be easy for people to understand. So one other thing that I would offer for our consideration is that this organization, AIDA, is really the leading force in economic development in our region, and that we're in the business of attracting, growing, and putting resources and vehicles in place to grow existing businesses and then to also sustain those businesses once they decide to land here. We actively advocate for and encourage economic development and growth. And we do that a lot through offering financial incentives for businesses that might be in need and those particular types of support. Those look like a number of things. Some of them that will resonate with some of you and some of your companies may have even benefited from them are things like an array of tax abatement opportunities. We have some financial structuring programs. We have expertise and technical assistance that we can lend to this. And from my perspective, and I'm relatively new to the board, I believe that it's this demonstrated track record of success that perfectly positions AIDA to participate in place-based branding for our community.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Gwen, you did touch upon this a little bit. So you're making it easy for me because everything you kind of touch upon segues into the next question. This is awesome. So what role does AIDA play in facilitating the marketing piece of this initiative specifically?
Yeah, I found the board's engagement with this process, us thinking about how to be a part of it. And frankly, to hear this idea from Tracy and Gavin, and then figure out, we're funding it for one thing. We put some money on the table to do that. And I believe that's critically important. You need to invest in what you believe in. But I think the other key role we played is helping Tracy identify the firm that we thought would be the best fit for our community. The other thing that we really talked about is what is the strategic intent of this effort? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? as a result of that. And it led to very interesting conversations about, frankly, something that I think is a challenge that we have sometimes is reframing how we think about economic development in light of what trend data is saying about the types of businesses that are driving the economy. We talked a lot about what we wanted the goals and strategies to be. And I think for the board itself, we were just saying to Tracy that it's really important to us that there be visible indication that the work that TGW is doing is really aligned with what she wants it to be. There needs to be, strike that balance between what's going on in her head and having that be created and produced by someone else. And the other thing that we are really talking about, and I think this will evolve as the project hits, is what will be the measurable outcomes that we're looking for? How will we know that this initiative is doing for our community the things that we want it to do? It also led to some interesting conversations about not only do we want to have a great economy, but it's critical for us to position as a great place to live. And how do we put that message into the marketplace while simultaneously TGW is doing marketing branding from a tourism perspective? I think those things are related, but not the same thing. So just monitoring and holding ourselves accountable for making sure that we get in the lane that we need to be in, because what might attract me to Auburn as a business owner is related to, but not necessarily the same thing that's going to attract someone to come here for the purposes of tourism.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So now, again, putting on your business owner hat, which you just mentioned as a business owner.
I don't think I ever take that off.
No, yes, it's on 24/7, right? But we're going to switch gears just a little bit from this aspect. How do you feel that the campaign will impact existing businesses?
You know, that's also, I think, been a powerful conversation that we've had, because we really talked about that. Because people that are here and have been doing their thing here over a period of time already have a point of view and perspective about doing business here. But as we start to think about the role that economic development plays in the life of our community, for me personally, my business is located here. Most of my business is New York State, and I worked nationally. And just recently, we started to work with companies that have international headquarters. And I want our community to be a thriving business environment. It's good for my company. It makes it easier for me to find people, vendors to supply things to Gwen. I think that it says a lot about a community when it's got a high visibility, successful business community. So I think anything that we do that gives lift to the economy will automatically give lift to my business. However, I don't think we can be haphazard about that, which is the beauty of this type of initiative. We are with intention looking to attract certain types of businesses. And, you know, Tracy literally is one of the smartest women leaders I know. And I'm so thankful that she's in the economic development space, because she understands the importance of the trends that we see going on in our community and helping people embrace the shifting economic environment by honoring the hallmark impact that existing companies and businesses have had, and using that as the platform to attract some of these new kinds of businesses we see coming into the community. For example, when I moved here in 1980, you could literally probably start a bowling ball at the top of East Genesee Street and it might not hit anything after 7 o'clock. And so to see breweries and the arts and theater and boutiques become the thing that's driving people downtown lovingly challenges people who think the economy is driven by solely old school kind of manufacturing businesses. And I think what Tracy's doing with this initiative is giving TGW that piece of information and allowing them to do the creative work that says we really do honor where we've been, and we see that as the springboard to the future of our community. And my business will benefit from that kind of growth and development.
So how do you think that the campaign will attract new businesses and talented workforce here, and folks outside the community that are looking to come into our community? Well, I'll lean into businesses.
Yeah, I'll lean into the language that the hip hop generation leaders I work with say, because who wouldn't want to have a business in a dope community? That's what they would say. And I do travel a lot across the region. And in the words of these hip hop leaders I mentor and coach, Auburn is really becoming known as a dope community, right? Like a place to be, that it's the spot. My clients are always talking to me about, you've been to the breweries, or, you know, and so I think this kind of branding really when done well, and it will be done well because Gavin and the crew have it going on, create an environment around our beautiful little city that will be really inviting and invitational to each other. And because who we're looking to attract are business owners, not only do we want people to think this is a dope place to bring a business, but we also need to, as part of this campaign, let them know, should you pick us, we have a full range of supports that will enable you to do the kind of business you want to do. And that's where organizations like AIDA and CEDA, our chamber, the county's sister organization to AIDA come into play. So it's that delicate balance of saying that this is the place you want to live, but also communicating out of the gate that we also have the technical supports you need to do that. And when I look at the workforce, you know, in my business, we work with emerging leaders and established leaders. Here's the piece of trend data that we need to keep in front of us, is that in the next 5 to 10 years, up to 85% of new entrants in the workplace are going to be millennial, women, and people of color. And when I think about the young people that are in those demographics, they're really looking for a dope place to live. But they also want to be able to conduct their business in communities and environments that are large enough to hold all of who they are. And I see this place-based branding having that beautiful combination of attracting a company because this is the place to be, having the technical assistance to help you grow or build that business, and then all of the cool stuff going downtown with the different living options, you know, the lifestyle stuff that's going on. I think that this can be a perfect storm of some really good stuff that will advance the future of our organization. And I'm in the legacy building years of my career. I want my business to have been one of these entities that contributes to the economy and opens doors for new entrepreneurs. And I'm very excited about this. And I'm all about supporting Tracy. I'm like, Tracy, what do you want me to do? I always say yes. I always have my hands on Tracy's back. I'm like, let's go. Thank you. I hope that information is helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, Gwen, I just want to kind of comment on a couple of things that you said, you know, as far as Auburn being the place to be, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, I agree with that 100% because I think Auburn is awesome. And where else would you want to be other than here? Right. But I have spoken to several people who, you know, especially being in the Equal Rights Heritage Center, who were right. just passing by on the thruway, right? And they saw the sign to come to the Equal Rights Heritage Center, and they popped in, and their messaging is, oh my gosh, we didn't know about Auburn, and we mm-hmm. didn't know how many wonderful things Auburn has to offer. We are coming back. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that is really great. I mean, there was somebody from Boston, of all places, who came to Auburn and was just walking on the sidewalks with her daughter in a stroller. And she said, you have lovely things here. She said, mm-hmm. I never realized this. And mm-hmm. she said, we definitely want to make a point to come back as a tourist now, not mm-hmm. just somebody shuffling by, getting gas and moving on their way. So, right. you know, it's really true. I mean, we hear it all the time. Auburn is a gem, and we have so much to offer here. Mm-hmm. That this is really great with this initiative. It'll just really boost it up even more than what we already have.
Well, you know, one of the things we offered to Gavin that one of a challenge point in this process would be convincing people, like we need to do some internal marketing about how cool we are, as well as external marketing. And I would invite people to revisit our own community from the perspective as a tourist, or from the perspective of someone who might want to bring a business here. Because, you know, my house is between Harriet Tubman's gravesite and her home. And because I'm so busy, I literally have to remind myself that I'm geographically located in this place that has this fabulous woman who lived here. And I think it's so important for us not to become complacent about the power and the beauty of where we live. And I think that this initiative will pull all of that together and offer that up. But I'm also going to say, I think we have to offer it up to ourselves and remind ourselves, because in the end, me being a woman president and CEO in this community is the best brand ambassador for another woman who may want to move her business here. And since that's the trending data, women entrepreneurs are contributing increasingly, for example, you'll want me to be walking around talking about why this is a cool place to live. But I think we have to refamiliarize ourselves with how cool this place is and the history of businesses and all these young entrepreneurs that are changing the game, and get really proud of that ourselves, because TGW, this initiative, is going to need me to be the face of that story. And so I'm very excited about it and very proud to live here. And I live here in and on purpose, so.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, you know, reintroducing ourselves to all this, right? But, you know, ourselves and the community members who lived here like yourself forever, you know, that they don't really know what happens in their own community. And a lot of them, especially, you know, just because it's the newest thing that's online, the Equal Rights Heritage Center, people said, we've lived here our whole life. We didn't realize we've never been in the Cayuga Museum. We've never been in Schweinfurth. We've never been to all these places. And they're like, shame on us because we have lived here our entire life. So it's really got them reinvigorated to get out into the community. And it's like opening up a whole new world to them in their backyard, which is really,
I could just
really
say
great.
one other thing. Yes, you know, I totally hear that. So I'm an Army brat. And so as a result of that, I've lived in every section of the United States except for Hawaii, New England, and Alaska. And I never lived anywhere more than 2 or 3 years. So when I moved to Auburn, and then of course I met and married somebody and had some youngins, and now I have some grandkids, right? It really was kind of a bizarre experience for me to psychologically think about living in one place, right? And so my husband's DNA is in the dirt of the community, right? They've been here like forever, ever. And so people ask me all the time, like, isn't it weird for you to have lived here, almost lived here for over 30 years now? And I say no, because it's home for me. I feel at home. And as a business owner, I have access to every single thing I need to come in and out of this community however I want. And, you know, that's how it's possible for me to be in Auburn and do business with a company that's got a headquarters in Japan because of where I'm located, because of technology. And I think that's the thing we need to be mindful of, is that I think we focus often on those hallmark businesses and are losing sight that these younger, new generation entrepreneurs are on some new level stuff, and they're making a lot of money. They're just making it in ways that doesn't look like the way that someone of my generation might make money. So I think there's so much that Gavin and his team have an opportunity to pull together for us with the right messaging that can make our community as attractive to a baby boomer business owner as it would be to these young, talented, gifted entrepreneurs that I'm mentoring that are creating businesses that I would have never thought about. I need a few good millennials to hand my cell phone to sometimes. Well, that's the stuff that they're doing. I'm giving it to my 5-year-old grandson, kind of, you fix this for Dee Dee? You know, like, so I just think we have to be open. And that's one of the things that I hope that the AIDA board can do as this all comes to fruition, is that we can literally become the brand ambassadors for our community and engage in those conversations that having a diverse, robust economy, diverse from the spirit of the type of entrepreneurs here, is ultimately in the best interest of all of us. And I know my company will get lift as a result of that. So I'm committed to this.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you, Gwen.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gavin, he and his team, they have been enthralled into our community, as Rob mentioned in the beginning, have been around for a while. TGW has worked with ERHC on branding and marketing. And Gavin, if you could just kind of share with us, tell us a little bit about that, you know, how it's worked, what you've done, you know, to kind of get yourself familiar with the community and what you've done in the past with us.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks, Stephanie, for having us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone tuning in. Again, appreciate the opportunity for this specific event, but just in general, you know, being so involved in the Auburn community, I just want to start out by saying, we've been, you know, we're located in Rochester, New York, so just up the road, you know, within an hour. And certainly we're very familiar with Auburn before, you know, working on these projects. But, you know, we've just had the great pleasure of getting to know so many community members and developing some great deep relationships, and just seeing kind of the passion that the community has for one another on an individual level, but just the passion that, you know, you all share for the city itself and the surrounding area is really something that we've just fallen in love with over the past few years, and, you know, find it a huge privilege to be able to continue our work in Auburn. So just wanted to acknowledge that. So yeah, speaking about the ERHC program in general, so we've been working on that for almost a couple of years now. And really, you know, the process that we took with ERHC and the process that we're going through right now with AIDA and CEDA, very similar from a process perspective in terms of, you know, doing a ton of market research for very specific purposes and goals, you know, going through the entire brand development process, which we've done, did for our ERHC, are in the process of finalizing that right now for the Place brand project. And then, going through the more tactical stuff, as Tracy mentioned, in terms of website development, developing a marketing strategy, implementing those, with the idea of actually, okay, we have the brand developed, it's great, we all love it, but how do we get it out into the world and in an appropriate way and, start speaking to the folks that we need to be speaking to. So in the case of the ERHC, obviously that is it's been mentioned a couple times already, a very tourism specific goal and objective for that program. And to Tracy's point, our goal was to develop a brand for the Equal Rights Heritage Center in and of itself as kind of an entity within the greater whole that is Auburn, New York. So the brand that we developed and tagline, I'm sure you've all seen it around, which we're really, really proud of and have really fallen in love with. The tagline is this idea of the center shining a light on Auburn, New York. So, developing a brand for the entity itself, the physical structure and being that is the building, which is beautiful, and the architectural design is just so striking, and the exhibit within is amazing. And Courtney does an amazing job there in terms of, the folks, and Stephanie as well, the folks that do walk in through the door. I think it gives such a good opening sight into what Auburn is and what it has represented in the past, but also what it represents right now and into the future. So that's kind of the tourism perspective and the brand purpose of what we've developed and what we've continued to work on. That's really the focus. It's speaking to out-of-towners who are, coming in for the day, even those driving, along the thruway. How do we get those people into Auburn to give them that initial insight into the world that is Auburn? Because obviously, getting people, it's been a little bit of a challenge this year, obviously, for circumstances that we all know far too well, but, getting people involved in the city, which is another important thing that we should mention. The world of tourism these days certainly is not just walking physically into a historic and cultural site or, down the street of Auburn, New York. It's also, interacting with the city itself from a digital perspective. Regardless of where you live, you could live across the globe and still have a very, heavy tourism involvement with a city like Auburn.
Great, thank you. So, Gavin, as Tracy and Gwen, we've all touched upon the History's Hometown, right? Mm-hmm. So how are you going to complement History's Hometown and shine a light on Auburn, yet keep each brand kind of unique?
Yeah, and Gwen touched on this so beautifully already. And the way we kind of look at it, and really it's, this massive third tier with the AIDA Place brand project. And I think Tracy mentioned it perfectly as well. When you think about I guess I'll start with that, when you think about a place brand, thinking about that from, this is a place to do business. This is a place to live. This is a place to work. That's kind of the ultimate goal in terms of, we want people to invest their lives in the city of Auburn. So thinking about that as kind of the highest tier, which is what we're working on right now. The next tier down, and these aren't tiers of importance by any means, but just in terms of commitment for people and individuals and businesses, the next tier down is that tourism tier. So in terms of commitment financially, from a time perspective, from a resource perspective, that kind of middle tier is, I'm going to go to Auburn for the weekend. I'm going to go for a week and check out all the amazing history that it has. I'm going to go to the breweries and have, this amazing food and dining and beverage experience that, that we may not have known about. So those different purposes, whereas History's Hometown is kind of, the tag that has been tied to the city for very specific reasons. Obviously, there is such an immense historical, significance of so many different aspects of the city from just an asset perspective. That's really been, kind of what's historically, pun intended, been tied to the city of Auburn. Whereas these next two levels and these two different brands serve very different purposes in terms of what we want people to get out of the city itself.
Great, thank you. Mm-hmm. And now what steps are involved in brand building?
Sure, so as has been mentioned before, the first huge step, which in both cases was a couple of months of time and commitment, not just for our team, but all of the key stakeholders within the different groups there, and with community members, business owners, and employees, and people who already are kind of the target that we're looking to attract more of. The first step is market research, and this is something that we take incredibly seriously and spend a massive amount of resource and time on. So kind of what that looks like, let's take the AIDA Place brand project, for example. We went through some very heavy, both secondary and primary research. So, hosting focus groups where our team goes and we have a roundtable much like this, where we talk about, some of the different it could be nuts and bolts financial benefits of the city, talking about real estate, talking about the schools, really talking about what, makes Auburn what it is today, and kind of getting different perspectives from a very direct in-person perspective. We conducted one-on-one phone interviews with probably, I want to say 30-ish, right around 30, maybe 35 different stakeholders. And again, some of the same folks that I already mentioned, but business leaders, some of those success stories, as Gwen has mentioned as well, and is one herself, because we want to be at the end of this process, we want to be able to tell the stories of these successful folks, because Auburn is the place to be when you want to build and grow and relocate a business, or you want to come here to work and play. So really, heavy emphasis on market research. Then we dive into developing a brand strategy. So identifying who we actually want to be attracting, who we want to be speaking to when we get into the marketing phase. So these could be site selectors, these could be business owners and decision makers. They could be in the world of COVID, remote workers, as we know that folks are flocking away from major metropolitan areas and looking for more affordable places to live, but still, bring some quality of life that they've been experiencing in these cities. So just identifying those folks that we need to be speaking to and delivering that message to, in order to, show that Auburn is, the place that they should be doing business or investing their livelihood and life in terms of living in. So once we get the strategy all developed, we move into kind of the marketing and tactical phase. So this includes, first and foremost, when we think about website development, we think about brand development from a design perspective. So developing a logo for the city itself, developing a tagline. I'm trying really hard not to, leak the new tagline, Tracy, before it's released to the public. So,
but it's cool.
It is cool. I'm trying to avoid like any word that's in it, so, which is so hard. But
I'll hit
really
you up
giving
in the chat, Gavin.
Exactly. really identifying, from a visual and from a tone and messaging perspective, how we're going to be positioning the city of Auburn, in a way that we can, very cleanly and cleverly communicate to these audiences to show what Auburn is all about. And then, as Tracy mentioned, that's when we jump into the more, the technical and tactical marketing approach. So getting the brand out in an activation process through social media, identifying some content development opportunities for photography and shooting videos, getting some of the storytelling stuff out there. So interviewing, these same stakeholders and business owners that we talked about from a research perspective, but really having them tell their stories. And then just telling the general story of Auburn itself. So one of the things we're really excited about is being able to show the success that is so unique to a city of the size that Auburn is. Y'all have opened 11 businesses in the time of COVID, and that's so amazing. And it's stories like that that are just so unique and show the value that the city of Auburn brings, both from a way of life perspective, but also from, a kind of a financial incentive perspective and assistance perspective, that going back to that community passion perspective. It's really about getting those messages out into the community in a way that's kind of wrapped up in a beautiful brand bow.
Yeah. So Gavin, I just want to circle back a little bit to the folks that you interviewed. So you mentioned that you interviewed, community stakeholders of different groupings of people. Can you kind of just be specific who you kind of got in touch with, historical and cultural sites, I'm assuming, restaurants, bars, eateries, retail. You want to just kind of expand on kind of the different pockets of folks that you spoke with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll keep it kind of at an industry level perspective, if that's okay. So, certainly from a food and beverage perspective, speaking with different restaurant owners, brewery owners, all of the amazing eateries and but also from the production side and the supply side. So speaking, agriculture is obviously such a huge driver of economic force in Auburn and around the surrounding area. So kind of thinking about the food chain from production to delivery, we really want to be speaking with people in all aspects of that, because, certainly being in the Finger Lakes region, that's one of the, the huge drivers of something like a place brand for a location within this region. So that's certainly a big focus. From a business development perspective, or a business stakeholder perspective, talking to, smaller retailers or, a couple of cafes and coffee shops, right downtown to larger manufacturers. So really hitting on a number of different industries, because they bring a very unique perspective, not just from a, who we are and industry type, but to Gwen's point, thinking about these larger historical players. Obviously they have, such an important role and voice in the community itself, but really focusing on, where some amazing expansion is happening with, these smaller, just progressive vibe, like really key players in the growth that is happening in downtown Auburn itself. Speaking to local artists, community members, we tend to get a little creative. So, some of the things that we do in terms of going to restaurants, we'll talk to the wait staff just kind of on the side, pretending that we're tourists and to get some honest feedback, or, walking through the park and just striking up a conversation as we normally would, just saying, things like, hey, I'm out of town. What do you love to do here? What do you love about this city? Like, just, small conversations like that, regardless of who they are, we know they're a community member, and that's really important as individuals as well, for the perspective of, we're trying to tell these authentic stories on the back end of this. So really it's about crafting, from many different business and individual perspectives who we're talking to, in order to gather that real information to be able to use when we're crafting this strategy.
So after chatting with all of them, what kind of feedback did you get from them? What was your reception when you kind of, maybe mentioned the place branding, and can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah, absolutely. I think and again, I don't want to I do want to go back to this so much, because there's such a positive and passionate vibe in the city. I think there are, one of the things we really found was the overall feeling of, community and wanting to build, lift all Auburn ships, if you will, was kind of across the board. That passion lived with everybody, almost everybody that we spoke to. I think there are certain aspects, certainly, that, people provided very honest feedback. I won't get into, the backwards parking and issues like that. But I think it's really, refreshing to hear that, those issues like that are, in the grand scheme of things and what we're trying to do, both from a community perspective and a business development perspective, those things are kind of on the periphery, a little bit smaller in terms of the challenges that we have to get around. I think there are certainly, COVID related challenges that obviously came up, that every city and community is going through, but just an overwhelmingly positive vibe and commitment. And I think, Gwen showed it so perfectly already that, she's in it and she's not alone in saying that and having that authentic feeling to drive the city forward. And again, we're fortunate to play a small role in the development of this process, because we certainly, working with the ERHC and now on this project, we feel that so strongly as well, even as, non-residents. So it's addicting, the passion that you all put out. Well, that's great to hear you had such a positive feedback. That's what we want to hear. So good.
Definitely.
Good to hear. So my next couple questions is how will success be measured and what do those metrics look like?
Absolutely. I think, Tracy touched on some of the kind of end goal, the ultimate metrics in terms of driving, new businesses, bringing folks in to work remote, driving people into to actually, live and make that, lifelong commitment in bringing their families in or moving themselves with partners. But I think, from a marketing and brand perspective, there are kind of, thousands and thousands of metrics along the way before we get to, okay, we've found somebody who has, laid their groundwork and taken the move. This is where I'm struggling with using the tagline where, but really, things like website metrics. So once we have the website that will be up in the next couple months, which we're extremely excited about, taking some traditional marketing metrics and, how many visitors are we getting to the site, just on a basic level to give some examples, how many visitors, who's coming, where are they coming from, how much time are they spending on the site, which types of content are they interacting with. So for the purpose of this project, are they looking solely at the incentives and, kind of the more financial stuff that we're putting out there from a content perspective, or are they focusing on, all of the natural assets that Auburn has to offer? These types of things that we, think about in terms of the content and the brand work that we're putting out into the space. We start to realize over time what's resonating with people. So then we can kind of shift our focus and strike that balance in terms of, from an ongoing perspective, what should we be talking about more? Maybe what should we be talking about a little bit less, with the ultimate goal of moving people down that path to an ultimate decision-making process. Same goes for social media channels. Obviously we want to grow our digital community. So looking at things like, the sheer number of the community sizes of our social platforms, but also how much people are engaging with the content that we're putting out into the space. One of the exciting things that we're going to be implementing will be a podcast. So again, we've, gone through the process of interviewing from a market research perspective, key stakeholders, but on the storytelling kind of back end side of this, for the public, how do we tell those stories and how do we allow people to give them an additional platform to be talking about their success stories, and to Gwen's point, attract, new folks into the area that can have new successes moving into the future in Auburn. So, thinking about how many views and listens those types of pieces of content are getting, are different topics resonating better than others. These are all kind of traditional marketing metrics that we're going to be paying close attention to, again, with the ultimate metric being, how many folks are we actually getting into the city.
Stephanie, if I could offer something to that from a board member's perspective too, that was really an important factor for us in terms of who we engage for this project. And, marketing initiatives are interesting. And so I think one of the things that Tracy and her team have been very skillful about bringing people into this boardroom that have lots of knowledge and expertise. So I have an extensive marketing background. Terry Cuddy's in the room. And this, I would say, and Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, this whole conversation was of importance to us because not everyone understands how you measure success in a marketing campaign. And when you're looking in the economic development space, in some cases, it can be a straight A to Z, right? Somebody needs to build a business, they come to us, we give them the support, something happens, boom, the business exists. Well, marketing doesn't always play out that way. So Gavin and his team at TGW have been really giving that information forward. And then I think, we're on this journey together. The board can have those conversations about how we've defined success and how the measurements that we're looking at are indicating success for us. So I understand that we'll get all this together and 12 businesses may not roll up in here at all, right, in year one. But that's not necessarily an indicator of a failure. That's the process taking, getting sticky, getting grounding out in the marketplace. And so I just put that out there as part of this forum so that there's going to be a level of patience that we're going to all need to have. And Tracy and the board becoming more skillful about the value add of doing something like this. that it's not necessarily a straight thing from A to Z, that this is going to be about a process, and we need to invite the community in to ride this with us. I kind of talk about like you're building a bicycle and riding it at the same time, right? We need everybody to get to pedaling and keep pedaling until we start to see it, because the outcome will find its way here. And so this is new thinking for a lot of people in our boardroom. I assume it will be for people in the community. That's why, you know, Tracy was very skillful and not only looking at a firm that could put the content together, but understands the importance of measuring this, because we can define success and then communicate out to the community how we're playing against those own self-defined measures. And that will be important.
Yeah, definitely. So Gavin, you kind of give us a hint here and there throughout, but where are you now in the process?
So as Tracy mentioned, we have gone through the entire branding process, as well as developing the marketing strategy. So really laying the roadmap from where we go. We're very heavily into the website development phase. And I should back up and say, as part of the brand strategy and development, the development of logo and tagline and, you know, things like messaging and, you know, what voice are we going to kind of give to the city to be able to speak to these different members of the key target audiences. So, you know, that whole process of strategy and initial creative development is done, and that will be rolling out soon. I'm so excited to get it out there, and I've successfully not leaked the tagline, so pat on my back for that. But that will be coming very soon to the public, and we're extremely, one thing I can say and will say, just to speak to the importance of the historical significance of Auburn. And I think Gwen mentioned this really quickly. You know, one of our challenges in developing this brand and how we move this forward is really paying, you know, close attention and you know, giving the historical successes of Auburn their due, you know, in the spotlight, because that is so important and really signifies the potential of where the city of Auburn is right now, you know, and that potential has certainly been realized, but, you know, how does that exponential growth happen in terms of the potential for the city? So, you know, everything is pretty much developed and we're ready to ship it off, and we're getting very close. How's that for a teaser?
That's good. And I'm not going to put you on the spot with this next one, because so what I'm trying to look for is, you mentioned soon, right? In the near future soon, but looking into the future as a timeline. What is that kind of looking like? Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking 3 months? You know, what does that look like?
Yeah, within the month, we're going to be finalizing, and I would say the middle of February is probably a good timeline for the public to have in their minds in terms of when we start to see things roll out in it, and it certainly will be a rolling process. Obviously, the website will be a big reveal and a big splash. The brand will kind of go along with that. And then, you know, as we move, we'll be developing some really amazing content and stories to be released over time for the next, you know, good portion of 2021.
I'll say it'll probably be after the February AIDA board meeting.
Yes.
There's that little thing called approval that probably has
something.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can't put the cart before the horse, you know.
People in our board have feelings about things, and we need to let it out.
It is our strong hope. It is our strong hope that it would be in the month of February.
We got you.
That's great. It's all very exciting. So, you know, I do want to say a few things. I do want to thank all of you, you know, for your expertise, your time, once again, your due diligence and making sure it's right for, you know, for our community. And, you know, as I mentioned before, you know, we've worked with TGW and Gavin with the Equal Rights Heritage Center. I've been absolutely thrilled and pleased with everything that we've seen, you know, from them in that aspect. And I also personally just want to thank on behalf of BID for, you know, the collaborative effort that has been between Tracy, CEDA, AIDA, BID. And, you know, it's been really great. And of course, TGW as well, but, you know, that was more on the the Equal Rights Heritage side. But, you know, it's been a real nice collaborative effort. And, you know, thank you, Tracy, for really, you know, putting that initiative together. And I think it'll be really great for everyone. And as you said earlier, we all have our little place and our little piece in the pie individually with our own entities. But I say this all the time, everybody who knows me, I'm huge with collaboration, huge with partnerships. And this is what we have to do to keep forging our community and our county and our city, you know, moving forward to be successful as it already is. So now we're just going to be putting the icing on the cake. And, you know, I think it's really terrific. So I want to thank all of you, you know, for your efforts and your due diligence and, you know, making this community great.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say before we end?
I mean, just on that note, one thing about this collaboration is that it gave us a great basis and a great foundation to start from. You know, as part of the research phase, we were able to leverage existing information we had in the community from prior efforts around the Downtown Revitalization Initiative and the Brownfield Opportunity Area and sentiment information that the tourism office has been collecting. So, you know, that collaboration has been so important to this process, and I think it will just ultimately result in the best product possible.
And just from, I think, a perspective as a board member, you know, in my company, we talk a lot about everything rising and falling on leadership. And I think I just want to say that we are very fortunate to have a really smart, talented economic development expert in our community, embodied by Tracy Verrier. And it's her leadership that's really bringing a lot of this to fruition, helping me, for example, reframe my thinking and my experience here in Auburn as a business owner around what economic development looks like in the community. And that leadership in partnership with yours, Stephanie, other people in the economic development space, the smart people sitting on all these boards and advisory boards, I'm confident that within the next 10 years or more, that this plan will bring to fruition the vision that Tracy has for it. And I just can't say enough how fortunate we are to have an economic development expert in our community like Tracy Verrier. So I'm really honored to be working with her and on her board. And I just want to thank her publicly for all she does.
I'll second that.
Smart girls rock, Tracy.
And it's, you know, it also comes down to that support too. So Gwen said earlier, she has her hands on my back, and there are lots of people in this community that do. And, you know, I'm not a vacuum, right? You know, I'm not, there's a lot that goes into economic development, and we have great partners in this community. And, you know, this always comes up is that, you know, people coming into our community, whether it's consultants or marketing firms or, you know, other chamber directors that I'm talking to, it's, you know, the one thing that constantly comes up is that even though it doesn't feel like it sometimes, our community collaborates a lot. And when you compare us to other communities, we have a really strong sense of working together, even if sometimes we can butt heads. So, you know, that I think is going to be a key in the success of this project and the success of growing economic development and quality of life and tourism in Cayuga County and the city of Auburn.
Yeah, I have to agree wholeheartedly. We have a real strong sense of collaboration in our community. And, you know, just as Tracy and everybody else, you know, here, you know, we're all on those conference calls, we're in those meetings, and, you know, I can speak for only BID, but I'll tell you what, in other BIDs, to hear the stories that go on, we are so fortunate and so lucky how our partners are so collaborative and really have the same vision. We have the same mindset. Sometimes we may have a different way how to get there, but we all have the same vision, the same mindset, which ultimately gets us there in the end, which is, you know, it's just amazing. I've lived in many different places, and I'll tell you what, this is probably the absolute best. It's just wonderful to have such a great community and partners in it. So again, thank you to everyone. It's just, it's a win for everyone in the end.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us. This has been fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you everyone for being on this call today. Really appreciate it. The information was fantastic, very interesting. So I just want to end the program now unless there's any other final thoughts. All right. So at this point, I just want to thank you for joining us for this BID program brought to you by Tompkins Trust Company. Next month's topic is Adapting in Times of COVID, featuring the directors from Auburn Public Theater, Schweinfurt Art Center, and Seward House Museum. I hope that you join us next month, and I hope that you enjoyed this presentation.